Forever. We will explain what that means, but before we do, this is Biweeklycast, episode number 48. Hosts are the same. We are still here. I'm Dima Malenka.
I'm Slava, and today we are going to talk about an essay by Paul Graham.
I think they say
Graham?
Paul Graham, right?
Graham.
It's like Buckingham Palace, right? It's not Buckingham Palace, something along those lines.
Fair enough.
In the beginning, like before we started, the forever thing was me referring to the idea that we now use different software, and so I don't need to count 1, 2, 3 or count down 3 to 1 before hitting the record, so that we get things roughly in sync. And Slava asked for how long I'm going to complain about that.
And basically, that's our new tradition. Like whenever we see the countdown, Dima is just complaining about machines taking our jobs and.
Right. Well, no, the machine did not take we deliberately gave our job to machine.
Which is even worse. Like you could complain about machines just for that long, but.
Right. However, long story short, today we are going, it is a book club episode, but we are going to discuss an essay, as we said. The reason for that is that I guess we both were very busy and indecisive sort of to choose a book, maybe because there are, we discussed all the good books, or I'm not sure what's going on.
There are no more good books.
Yeah, that can be the case, but one way or the other, we couldn't choose the book in time enough for us to be able to read it, and then we went for something shorter, which turns out to be essay.
Yep, and the essay is named Founders Mode. Just to be sure, there is no follow-up before we start, right?
There is a little bit of follow-up. Like last time we discussed me trying to ask everyone to be more specific when they present ideas or share something. And we felt, both of us, if I recall correctly, in the end of the episode after the recording ended, felt that maybe we didn't explore this thing fully or in all the interesting directions, and contemplated for a bit, maybe we do extension, like continuation of the discussion of the topic. And I thought that I could develop this a little bit deeper on my end. And also in last couple of weeks, things happened in that realm. So I will have some additional data points. And I think maybe I started steering us in a direction that is a little bit more narrow, looking only at part of the bigger phenomenon. And it might be useful to look at the bigger phenomenon, but I need a little bit of time to develop that topic. So I think
double check. You're talking about being more specific in the episode about being more specific.
Yes, for sure. Yes. That's what's going on, and that's why I'm so windy and wordy, because I'm trying to be specific about what's going on. Long story short, we will continue the discussion in the regular episode when it's my turn to propose something to discuss.
Yep. And you actually did suggest this essay by Paul Graham. And
I did.
How did it come to your mind? Because it's kind of fresh. It's September 2024, but not too fresh to just read it.
That's a good question. I think Paul Graham has a little bit of iconic status in Silicon Valley startup-y circles and culture. He is famously a founder of very successful incubator, I think it's called, which is called Y Combinator, and and they kind of incubated and invested in a lot of prominent startups, which now became kind of big companies. And he is also famous for being an essayist. So he has his site where he every once in a while. I think he did this more often in the past, but would share essays about how to be a successful entrepreneur or something along those lines. And when he published this essay, Founder Mode, naturally, like because Paul Graham being Paul Graham, people pay attention to what he's saying, and then a lot of folks who are related somehow to Silicon Valley picked up this essay and started discussing it. Right at the time when it was published, I think it was something like mid-September or something, and I've heard about it in numerous podcasts. I've read it, but didn't take it further. But then when we have this situation where we couldn't choose a book, I thought like this piece is relatively short. It's thought provoking in a sense. Why don't we talk about it?
Mm-hmm. It is part of the essays section of Paul Graham's website, but it doesn't feel like an essay to me. More like a reflection blog post about someone's speech, and it's just about the definitions, because I think that usually essays develop some kind of thought or idea, and in this case it was kind of chaotic a bit, and basically it's a situational thing I would expect to see on Facebook or Twitter or something. Well, maybe I'm just spoiled by Aspen and their philosophical approach to essays, but I usually see more topicality around something, and it's kind of hard for me to label this piece of text. It doesn't make it less thought provocative or interesting to discuss, but just like rubs their own way when I hear essay.
It's a good thought. Let's maybe double click into that, because I feel like you might be onto something. Like structurally or stylistically, I think that there is a form to how essay is supposed to be built, right?
Well, yeah, there is a build-up. Then basically there is one of a few ways how you develop your thoughts, either analytically or chronologically, and some kind of conclusion section. Basically, very simple, but definitely not something Paul did.
Right, and it is also supposed to kind of develop one particular thought or proposition, like to put it forward and take it through some conclusions or some development. I agree with you that it does not happen in this particular piece, and it did make it a little bit harder to read and understand. And I found myself several times asking myself, what exactly is he either proposing or stating or something like that?
Like if it were a Facebook post, I would probably scroll through some paragraphs to see what's the main idea, because this is what people do on social media. They just build up with a really weird way because they just have to tag some people. Some people would see that this is a reaction to something, but then there is like usually 2 or 3 paragraphs of essential text and then some other follow-up thoughts. And this is what felt here, but it was on the website. It was saying essays in the section. I felt like,
Doesn't feel right. To Paul's credit, I think his other pieces, especially his earlier pieces, definitely. Well, I didn't check, but to me it feels like, if my recollections are correct, that those were like more truish essays. There was a like thought that was developed and explored from several angles, and this one indeed, like it does feel a little bit like kind of Twitter threads lumped together a little bit, slightly.
well, basically this piece of text is named the Founder's Mode, and it's a reaction to someone's speech at one of the Y Combinator's events. And the overall idea was that founders and managers probably treat team creation differently. Team creation and delegating kind of things that, and here both Brian and Paul argue against the common MBA wisdom, which says hire smart people and let them do what they think is right. And they basically just talk around this idea over and over and over and over, saying that no, founders know better. Like, if you're a founder and you feel like getting into something or doing it in a specific way, trust your guts. That's the way I read it, in a very primitive way.
Yeah, I think that this is what it is. So there was this presentation or talk by Brian Chesky, who is a CEO, founder or co-founder and current CEO of Airbnb. And he was talking about like sort of what he learned being a founder and manager and CEO of the company, saying that, I should have been sort of more involved and kind of more direct with how I drive the company, which Paul took back and called this whole thing founder mode and opposed it to a manager mode, where a manager comes and basically sort of manages to priorities or metrics or something, whereas founder would have something special in them to drive company better.
And this is where I got my first thought that I can't read it seriously because of this kind of discrimination of a class of people. There were quotes like C-level execs as a class include some of the most skillful liars in the world. Seriously, Paul? Like, don't founders lie very well and can cheat? And like, I have no idea how it is related to C-level execs and MBA and managers and founders. Yes, there are wrong choices. Like, yes, you can hire people who do not professional work, but how come it's a class discussion, founders versus C-level?
Yep, you get it at heart of it. Like, this is also what I dislike a lot here and in general. This, for lack of a better word, I call it labelism, like where you attach labels to something without then going deeper into what that means and what are the real world sort of behaviors and dynamics, and then clash just based on those labels. This is good, this is bad, this is like in Jonathan Swift. Oh, geez, in English, what would be the words for the war between kind of it's not like eggs, like different. I need to check and educate myself a little bit on that, but it does feel a little bit like this, because it's not black and white. There are good, great founders actually, and there are great managers, and likewise there are founders who are not so great, and there are managers who are not so great. You need to look into the details.
And then the
Be
other
more
thing, like
specific.
being more specific, he just basically mentioned Brian's experience, some random founders who are really hard to nail, and Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, like the guy is dead. Like, why? Of course, we can reflect on his way of thinking and managing right now, because like he can't really tell us, well, actually, I did hire quite a few managers and they did very well scaling my business at certain periods of my life. So I don't know.
Okay, I hear a bit of a disappointment in your voice there, and the thing, Brian himself comes a little bit to vindicate you, because there was, I found this later piece by him, or like excerpt from the interview or something along those lines, where he said like, no, I never called it founder mode, and I think, and he says that to me, this means it kind of boils down to the question: does CEO understand deeply, more than anybody else in the company, the product they sell? Which makes a lot of sense. Like, you don't necessarily need to be a founder, but if you have this attitude and mindset, then you probably are more likely to do better things with your company.
When people try to build an argument, it has to contain two things. It should be valid and solid. Solid meaning the logic and the structure. Valid means it should be based on examples, statistics, data, or something. And this
Okay.
is where it sounds solid. Like, I can imagine how this line of thoughts was created, but the validity is a quote of Brian's talk and some people's reaction to it, and Steve Jobs' example. Then,
Mm-hmm.
like, Paul definitely has access to lots of managerial teams, and
Right.
it feels a bit biased to me. Like whenever they say like, well, there are two kind of modes delegating things, and it's really hard to articulate what is the difference. Like, who says that the founder cannot get to product meetings or get in the context of something? It's probably about extra interpretation of something, because from what I understood from the intro about Brian's initial speech, he mentioned that the overall approach to giving away and stepping down from like entire activities, like you hire the CFO and you don't look into finance anymore, that's what got him in trouble. Like when you basically get managers and you stop monitoring whatever they do, and that's not really founders or MBA way or any other way. It's really hard to understand what the core of the issue Paul is trying to build up here. Is it delegating to wrong people? Is it not caring enough about some things in your company? Or is it about lack of monitoring on how things you delegated are going?
Yep, that's fair. It's indeed a little bit difficult to say what Paul is for or against. It's just the labels are too broad, like the founder mode or the manager mode. Maybe we can, now that we dissected the structure and the argument in the essay, maybe we can spend a little bit of time talking about the thoughts we got out of that. Before we do that, you said that it feels biased, which also feels biased to me. Which kind of bias do you think we are dealing with here? Is it a survivor bias or the selection bias?
Why would you have to choose? I think it's both. Like an argument could be perfectly biased in two different ways.
I think I agree. Like survivor bias is because we are looking at companies and founders sort of who are successful, and also selection bias is that Paul chooses not to look at others, at other companies that may have perfectly followed the founders mode, whatever we call it, but still failed. And I think it's interesting. Maybe there is a little bit of professional deformation going on there because Paul Graham is a venture capitalist, right? And venture VCs famously are looking for one of a kind companies, right? For their business is built on the idea that if they invest in, let's say, 10 companies and only one is hugely successful, then they are successful. Their business is not to miss huge success at the expense of trying to invest in a whole bunch of other stuff in hope of not missing the success. So it may be that he is, from his kind of professional point of view, he is looking at it this way. And for him, it's important that there are companies that are hugely successful. But for other companies who may not be hugely successful, sometimes it may be even better that professional managers take them over and turn them into stable and profitable businesses, maybe not wildly successful as some others.
Yeah, but then I'm sorry, but I'll circle back to the quotes, because he then discusses how VCs usually don't have founders and they have no idea what founders mode is because they are pure managers.
Yeah, I would also sort of disagree with that. I think the there are a lot of VCs who are former founders and entrepreneurs, and I think those are the most successful ones. And likewise, there are lots of VCs who are just random sort of people who may or may not be successful. It's the label is too broad there.
Yeah, and one of the things why it was kind of hard for me to agree, despite all of the inconsistencies, is the lack of understanding of the damage that was in the specific case of Airbnb. They said like, quote, give room to do their jobs. He followed the advice, and the results were disastrous. What exactly happened there? Why was it disastrous? Is it because he gave them the room and didn't monitor, or because he hired the wrong people, or the decisions they made and he was not aware of? Like, what kind of issues actually happened there? And you were suggesting going into more like ideas around this essay, and this is one of the thoughts that I personally face, like, because I'm both CEO and co-founder of my business, and the question is, where should I deep dive and where should I step away? Because you can't be an expert in everything. You have to, like, even the product lane right now, it's getting too complex. Like, we have 4 different products, and to be an expert in all of them, like, it takes time and energy. Plus, you have to do business development, plus finance, plus general managerial activities, and you just can't be everywhere. Moreover, founders do exit their businesses. Like, it's a pattern that business does work with the founder for some time, and then founders leave, and the business has to keep working. So basically, one of the at this stage, one of the key things for the founder is to find the right people who can do it without you, one way or another. And finding this subtle balance, like where you should care and deep dive and where you should step away and actually give people the room, is an open question for me right now, because we are extending the C level management team, like trying to delegate some of my responsibilities to them. And I don't think there is a right answer, like when it should happen, how intensive it should happen, how much should I monitor. And it's really hard to say that if I know better, because I totally don't. Like, let's take an example of finance. For some reason, I bring finance too often in the recent episodes, but as a founder, I might not even know what the best business model for my business is. And if we get people who are more competent than me, they might find the solutions that I could never even think of. And my limitations and the fact that I can basically micromanage any team and any product is a big risk for the business in the future.
Right. I have thoughts about that. But before we do that, let me circle back to the first question you had about the example of Brian and what changed, what was his mistake. I tried to dig a little bit deeper into that. I didn't manage to find any indications for what went wrong or what changed on the surface. Maybe if I spend a little bit more time, I could have found that. However, there is this thing in Wikipedia. There is on the page about Airbnb, there is table with their business outcomes, like the net income versus revenue and stuff like that. And there is in this table, there is no data for initial years, but then when the company went public in 2017, we start getting more regular data, and it has net losses for the period of 2017 through 2021, and in 2022 they turned in rather massive, was $2 billion profit. Am I reading this stuff correctly? 1,000, almost $2,000 million. That's 2 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2023, even more than that, it's almost $5 billion. So from the outside, it looks like something have changed. It may or may not have been connected to Brian's epiphany about how to run the company. But I think this is the best we have on that question.
Yeah, but the reasons for that are wrong decisions. Could these decisions be made by a founder? Totally. Like, I think it could have been anything. Like, they might have changed people who were not aware of their business,
Right.
and they did get the responsibility for some broader areas. I think it was something that we discussed when we were talking about this Netflix book, that when you give away a lot of responsibility and you are not really preparing people for the responsibility they should take, this is where a lot of issues could happen.
Right. And to your later question, I think there can be at least there can be multiple different options and opportunities, but maybe some of the extremes can be when we talk about founders or CEOs delegating and stuff. The, I think the questions of how, when might be slightly misleading there, and it is more important to talk or look into the intention, like what is it that we are doing this for, and derive from that how
Mm-hmm.
and when to do things. Because I think that depending on the business itself, one thing can be, if a business is a product-centered business, something like, I don't know, like Airbnb, where the success is sort of predicated on the success of the product, and success of the product is predicated on this product being able to deliver value and usefulness and utility to its users and customers. In that case, I think it makes a lot of sense for CEO to kind of keep kind of pushing in that direction, being in the product and drive how it goes and so on and so forth. On the other hand, with some other businesses, it may be that once you got to initial success with this product, but you see that the product itself doesn't have too long legs. Maybe it is a little bit of a product over time and it will not be there forever. You want to start looking for new products or new ideas to explore, maybe adjacent to that product, in which case the founder and CEO becomes more of a portfolio manager, or even investor, VC kind of investor within the realm of his company, which requires different skill set, different people to work with, and different abilities and talents that are required to complement the initial kind of talent and vision of the CEO. So I don't think there can be a one size fits all sort of solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree. And I think one aspect I would like to add here is that many founders who are actually getting to delegating things quite often do it in a very exhausted state, like they're tired of something, and they might be rushing some hires and stepping away from certain activities a bit too soon just because of the uh, exhaustion, emotional exhaustion that they face. And it feels like, all right, like I can't do it anymore. I just need someone who will take it over. And then they never look back. Like
Mhm.
there's no smooth transition of like, yeah, I'll stay for a year with you. We can do it together. Like I'll be next to you, watching things happening, seeing how we can collaborate, and learning about your way of doing things, and you will learn about how I used to do things here. Like most people do it very abruptly. Like, all right, that's your job now. Like, farewell. I'm going to do things I'm interested in, and then voila, we have some misunderstandings and dramatic failures or disastrous results.
But I agree with that mostly. I would maybe slightly to take exception to the characterization that most of the time or all of the founders do it like this. But I definitely see that this can be more of a pattern where like founders drive themselves sort of into the ground and then delegate out of sheer necessity and don't do a particularly good job at that, just because of the exhaustion, lack of time or energy to do that properly. But then what would be the saying there, that like whatever you seeds that you sow, like if you don't invest sufficiently into this whole delegation affair, then probably you ought to expect that results are going to be hit and miss.
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
Exactly. Interesting. But to step back a little bit from the structure, and like given that we don't have a good definition for manager mode versus founder mode, and we maybe got some intuitive feel for it, do you think that there is indeed a difference between those hypothetical mode of operation for a team or for a company? And if so, where do you think it is? The difference, I mean.
I don't see the difference. I think that a founder who runs his fifth startup is more of a manager than a founder. A manager who runs business he believes in is more in founder's mode. Like when you care about something, as an example, Oля Rudneva and Superhuman Center. Like she's the CEO of this thing, but she is very deep in the processes. She gets into the product. She basically behaves like a founder. If you don't know the formal status, you can misread who is who in the team just because of the attitude of a person towards something. And I would say that the biggest difference is the implication of the risks. Like how much are you impacted by the failures? Like, yeah, if your personal business fails, it's basically your fault and your responsibility. If you're a manager in the company that fails, so well, it didn't work out. Let's switch to the next one. Like I've gotten my experience. We can move on to something else. It's kind of harder to move on from your own project which failed.
Interesting. I feel the way I understand and feel those modes, I think there is a little bit of a difference, but I think it's different than what you said. But I think what you said is complementary to the thoughts I had. I think there is this mode where, like, manager, for lack of a better word, might be managing the team or the company for shorter term, more immediate objectives, whereas someone who is more foundry mode or just a stronger, let's say, leader and visionary might have a vision for something in the future towards which they drive their company or team, and for which they can sort of endure and sustain maybe short-term, not to say failures, but less than stellar results by certain measures. Like when they say that some companies fail because their CEOs manage them to produce great or good looking quarterly reports so that Wall Street is happy about their thing. Whereas in some other cases, managers have like stronger vision and they manage around those quarterly expectations from the investors and do something to not to be swayed by short-term gains for longer term impact or bigger, brighter future. So I think that is the difference to me. Like the manager mode, I would describe as managing towards specific short-term objectives, whereas foundry mode or owner or leadership visionary mode would be managing or driving company towards something bigger, more distant North Star that aims to get everyone to a better state.
It kind of reminds me of these old memes about leaders versus managers, and when they try to show that people who inspire, who think about the future, the long-term perspective, but that's all to me not a perspective of a position of a person, it's a function. I've seen managers who do visions better than founders. Like founders actually slow things down because their vision was implemented 5 years ago, and managers have way better perspective on how this thing could develop. But founders just don't care anymore, and they are slowing things down. And if you ask managers about the way the product could develop, managers sometimes know way more. Like they have better feel of the product, they feel the industry, and the founder who just did one's job well at the very first steps and stopped doing it well 6 years later is out of touch. And this visionary function can be delegated to a team, and managers could shape the visions. Because yes, there are visionary based companies a la Steve Jobs and specific product, but they are still managing to innovate things without Steve, and they can build the future products. Like, the question is how successful they are, but as a business, like, they've been doing well. And if you look at the top companies, let's say innovative companies, to be very specific, quite often their founders are not their visionaries anymore. Like, there are way better. I can imagine that Elon Musk is not deep in all the products that he manages, and there are better managers who have product mindset and who know how this industry is going to develop. And he's basically a face of businesses that attracts investments and support and people and reputation and everything else. And whenever I think about innovative studios and creative design agencies, like, there are people with way stronger visions than founders, and founders just find a way to nurture them and give them the direction, like, where are we heading together as a system. And it's more of an administrative function rather than visionary function.
Right. Yeah. The vision might be to let the specific talent or kind of artist you are working with to achieve their best, and that's the vision, rather than like specific artistic vision that is driven by the company. But I think I agree with you. And once again, I sort of started thinking that the the naming does matter. And even now, when I tried to pose my question, I use this manager mode versus founder mode. I feel that the words manager and founder kind of taint what's going on, and kind of sways the thinking in the directions that maybe not necessarily coherent with the original thinking. I guess what I was trying to get, and in a sense you also alluded to that, is there is this sense of ownership or kind of owner mindset that you have, that one has, or they don't, right? And it can apply to a company, to a team, to a particular area they are responsible for. And when you are dealing with those people, you can feel it, right? When someone just does something within the boundaries of responsibilities given to them by somebody else, or they know this thing and they are ready to step up and respond and take responsibility for whatever happens around the thing that they manage, for the lack of a better word. And it can happen at all the different levels or layers of hierarchy, and with founders or managers or just engineers or whoever else alike. And this is what important, like that feel, that attitude, that mindset of, oh, I'm responsible for this thing and I'm going to be the best possible steward for something, or I'll manage for the check boxes that were given to me by someone else.
Just to illustrate it with an example, there is a Ukrainian product tech company that has, if I'm not mistaken, 6 founders, and they switched the CEO position within this board. Like, the CEO is always a co-founder, but way, like, how different these guys are, you can't even imagine. Like, their managerial styles, their functions, because they were coming with different expertise. Somebody was good at product, somebody was good at business development, somebody was good at finance and investment, somebody was good at HR related aspects and people management. And they're all founders, like, and they work very differently. And this company has been going through a number of crises related to their management styles. And they were all founders. Like, there was not a single hired CEO kind of person. And they did go through very good times. They did go through the very bad times. And which mode were they in?
So this is interesting. I think somehow it became more common in recent days to have co-CEOs or something along those lines. It's interesting what this means or what it says about the whole state of how we run businesses. You might want to look into this at some point. I think Netflix had co-CEOs. I think some other rather prominent companies have a similar structure.
Mhm.
Interesting.
So putting this thing aside, and really feel lack of definitions about this founders mode and managers mode to discuss it more thoroughly. I do think that if a leader in business, whether it's a manager or a founder or whoever this person is, because the leader could be actually neither, like neither manager nor founder, but someone else. And if this leader cares enough about the product and about the customer, the company has the chance to develop. Whenever this leader stops caring about the product and the customer in one way or another, it's probably doomed to fail. Like this is when it's getting really hard for managers to push through positive initiatives, to develop, to invest into the right things, and it becomes quite bureaucratic and a machine which is not creating value anymore. It's just creating profits, and this is where business stops being business, in my understanding of business. And if I could sum it up, then I would say that people should care about the value that they create and the value created for someone by something. Yeah, something is your service or product, for someone is your client and customer, and basically doing our best to stay in touch with both sides. Like what's actually, what do our customers feel and what does our product look like and is going to look like? Is it a single achievement of a person, a founder, a manager? Most likely not. Should this manager or leader or founder care how things are done there? Probably yes. If it means coming to the meetings, maybe then it's a good idea to come to the meetings. If it means doing this customer journey and just using your product intensively or talking to people who use your product intensively, that's another thing. If your business just needs investments to scale up, then caring about your business would be stepping from things that you know and going into this investment world, seeking for the resources your company needs. So the care is not your position related thing. Like if you care, you care. If you don't care, you don't care. No matter whether you're a founder, a manager, a co-founder, a co-CEO, a COO, an MBA or non-MBA exec or non-executive manager. Like I think that most of this essay would just mean care about what you do and do your best. And if you can't, see if somebody can help you or do it better.
Well, I think you nailed it. Like we just rewrote, like we just created a better and much shorter version of this to say, care about what you do. Like that's it. It makes no, it makes a lot of sense. And another thing, another example that comes to my mind in this regard is the Boeing, right? The company that goes through very difficult times now with several very bad incidents happening to their airplanes recently, and a lot of people, not a lot, like it may be almost universal, like everyone points to the fact that, oh, the Boeing's leadership aren't engineers, they are professional, quote unquote, managers. Again, for the lack of a better word, like let's not that swayed the discussion, but those were people who cared most of all about, let's say, shareholder profits and kind of shareholder value. They didn't care as much or at all about what makes Boeing Boeing, that is creating state-of-the-art aircraft and servicing the kind of engineers and aviators and airlines. And everyone is sort of saying no, like for them to turn themselves around, they need someone in leadership who understands aviation engineering to fix the quality issues and stuff like that. But once again, it boils down to caring and be caring about the right thing. That there might be a challenge to figure out what is the right thing to care for your business, but there you go.
All right. So if we were famous VC founders, we probably would write an essay after this podcast and publish it to get a few million views, but that's not very likely.
What exactly not likely? Us writing an essay getting 100 million views, or us being a VC?
No, let's just say us and writing just by itself.
No, like you you poke where it hurts. Like, don't do that.
I do it because I care.
Oh man. Oh yeah, you now reminded me of all of the things I wanted to write about and things I need to write about that I didn't get a chance to yet. Or not only I didn't get a chance, maybe you would put it, I didn't care enough to write, and it hurts even more. Oh. That's heavy.
What I like about such types of text, that they provoke you to think about something and reshape the ideas into something that rings for you.
Exactly. So don't take anything for granted. Think about it, and you've got some good ideas and some good thoughts.
Unless you're a C-level executive and one of the greatest liars in the world, then just don't care.
Right. Yes. I wanted to think quickly of a clever way to continue that drift, but I don't.
It's good. We'll have a follow-up next episode, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Which is going to happen in a few weeks.
In a few weeks, in a few hopefully good weeks.
Good weeks.
Yeah, care about what you do.